Welcome to the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. My name is David Tarnas, Chair, and I have Vice Chair Greg Takayama with me, and the other members will join us presently. And today is Friday, March 24th, 2 p.m. here in Conference Room 325 at the State Capitol. Welcome to everybody who's here to testify in person and on Zoom. And I would request, so that we can get through everything on the agenda and listen to everyone and have the opportunity to ask questions, if you would please keep your testimony to about 2 minutes, and at that point I'll ask you to summarize and then move into questions. If you're testifying on Zoom, just turn your camera and microphone on during your testimony only. Keep it off at all other times. And if you get disconnected, don't worry, just rejoin. I'll do my best to allow you to testify at that point. Please don't use any trademarked images and your background on Zoom, because that means our live feed is kicked off of YouTube, so we don't want that to happen. So help us out by not using any trademarked images. And of course, be on your best behavior. Pretend like your mother's in the room, okay? So you don't want to embarrass her. So if you would please be so kind and to have good manners, that would be great. It's okay to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We're all here to work on behalf of the people of the state of Hawaii. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Our first measure is Senate Bill 67, relating to commercial activities on beaches. This measure prohibits any commercial vendor from pre-setting commercial beach equipment on a public beach under the jurisdiction of the Department of Land and Natural Resources unless the customer is physically present. It requires commercial vendors to expeditiously remove commercial beach equipment after the customer has finished using it, and allows the DLNR to grant exemptions through rules. Establishes administrative fines for violations. First up, we have the Department of Land and Natural Resources in support. Megan Statz, good to see you. Welcome. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Megan Statz, the Assistant Administrator for the Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. The department stands in strong support of this measure. This measure really will help the department kind of address the complaints and provide clarification in the definition. So here for any questions.
And apparently you've had issues like this for some time and have not been able to address them. Is that why this is
That's
useful?
correct, yes. We've had numerous issues. We've had citations issued in Waikiki and other locations, and then when it goes to court, it just gets thrown out because there is no definition. So this will definitely help us.
Very good. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here, and if you could stick around so we could ask questions, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Megan. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, testimony and support from the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and testimony and support from Leimomi Khan and Doug Meller. Is there any other testifiers wishing to testify on this measure in person or on Zoom? If not, questions, sir? Just one question for DLNR. Ms. Statz, it seems like this is primarily an issue in Waikiki. That's what really generated this. Is that what your experience is?
Majority of our issues, yes, has been on Waikiki, but we do have other locations that this may be popping up at. So this, like I said, will help address that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There being no further questions, let's move on to the next measure. And that would be Senate Bill 129, relating to minors. This measure requires providers of no-cost emergency shelter and related services to maintain separation for unrelated adults and minor children, and take steps to ensure pertinent youth obtain and receive services from the juvenile justice or child welfare systems. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Human Services. Welcome. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Aloha and good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of committee and others. My name is Tim Hitchens, Social Services Division Assistant Administrator for DHS Director Kathy Betts. First of all, sorry we got the wrong chair on, on our submission, so apologies for that. We stand on our written testimony offering the comments. I primarily want to highlight that we are concerned for oversight of any provider of services to our young people, and that's largely what you'll see in our testimony. And I will be here and available for any questions or comments, and should any comments come out of other testimony, I'd be happy to try to respond to those as well.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Opportunity Youth Action Hawaii. Testimony, comments from Residential Youth Services and Empowerment Organization. Testimony in support from Hawai'i Hemaloto. Testimony in opposition from Gerard Silva, and testimony in support from Will Caron. Was there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, Vice Chair? Nope. Thanks very much. Thanks very much to the testifiers. Moving on to the next measure, Senate Bill 45, relating to minors. This measure allows minors 16 years of age or older and emancipated minors to petition for domestic abuse protective orders. First up, we have testimony and support from Judith Clark with Hawaii Youth Services Network. Next, we have testimony and support from Angelina Mercado, Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Please proceed, Angelina Mercado, on Senate Bill 45. Ms. Mercado, Senate Bill 45, we're ready for your testimony.
Good afternoon, Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. This is Angelina Mercado with the Executive Director of the Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'm here in strong support of this measure that would allow survivors of domestic violence who are minors to be able to access protective orders through our judicial court system, even if their parents may not be able or willing to be able to petition on their behalf. We are grateful for this opportunity to provide additional services and resources to minors, and are grateful that you have heard this measure. I'm here and available for any questions you may have. Aloha.
Aloha, thank you. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Nonohe Botello, Hawaii Coalition for Child Protective Reform, and testimony in opposition from Derek Carlin. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure here in person or on Zoom? If not, questions, Vice Chair? Nope, thanks very much. We'll move on. We did hear this measure in the House version, so thank you very much to the testifiers. We learned a lot at that point, but we'll move on now to the next measure, which is Senate Bill 406, relating to child visitation. This measure allows the court to award reasonable visitation rights to a petitioning grandparent of a minor child when the child's parent is unable to exercise parental visitation due to death or incarceration, and denial of reasonable grandparent visitation rights would cause significant harm to the child. First up, we have testimony and support from Ashlyn Victorino with the organization Grandparents' Rights Hawaii Campaign. And we have testimony and support from Nonohe Botello with Hawaii Coalition for Child Protective Reform, and testimony and support from Misty Kuheana. Please proceed, Misty Kuheana.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Please proceed.
Oh, okay. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I stand by my written testimony in strong support of Senate Bill 406, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, where I stated that the necessary steps were taken in amending this measure. I myself am a grandparent who suffered the loss of my daughter and was denied contact with my granddaughter, even after trying to sue for visits. I'm not asking to have guardianship, I'm just requesting visitation. I believe this bill would help grandparents like me bond with our grandkids, like our kupunas have done for a generation. Through this mission of trying to bring awareness to this problem that we have, I've met so many grandparents that are willing to step up to the plate of taking part in their grandchildren's lives, but we are unable to. We understand the kuleana is ours, but in the end, the decision will be up to you, and I humbly ask that you pass this bill so that grandparents like me may have a bond. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, and my heart goes out to you since you haven't been able to see your daughter for 2 years, 7 months, and going on the 8th month. And I
Yes.
appreciate you reaching out and sharing your personal story with us in this matter. It's very compelling. And so mahalo, nui loa. Okay, next we have testimony in support from numerous individuals, Tristi Lee Paiva, Marilyn Yamamoto, Devani Enocencio, Cheryl Silva, Michelle Galdones, and Rhiannon Strange. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 406 in person or on Zoom? If not, questions, Vice Chair? Seeing none, we'll move on. Again, mahalo nui loa, Misty Kuleana. And we're going to move on to other measures, and we'll make decision on this one at the very end of the agenda. So you're welcome to stay, or but it will be a little while before we get through the rest of these items on the agenda. Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on. Senate Bill 130 relating to the Uniform Child Custody. If you could please mute yourself, Ms. Kuihana, that'd be great. Senate Bill 130 relating to the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction and Enforcement Act. This measure allows state courts discretion to not enforce a child custody determination of a foreign country if the child custody law of the foreign country imposes capital punishment for apostasy, religious or political beliefs, or homosexuality, and a parent or child demonstrates risk of being subject to the law. First up, we have testimony in opposition from the Commission to Promote Uniform Laws, Ms. Elizabeth Kent. Please
Aloha,
proceed.
and I wanted to say I saw that Ms. Rhiannon Lee Strange actually came on for the last bill, but I'm not sure if you saw her. Do you want me to proceed?
Let me hear from her. Oh, thank you so much,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Kent.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll come right back to you. Let's back up to Senate Bill 406, and Rhiannon Strange, if you could please proceed. I'm sorry, I missed you. Please proceed. Ms. Strange, if you would like to proceed, we'd like to hear from you. Maybe turn off your video and so we just hear your audio. That might help. Your bandwidth is limited. Try speaking now. Unmute yourself and try speaking now. Sorry, we're not able to hear you. Is she muted? I'm sorry, ma'am. We're not able to hear you. I really appreciate you trying to testify, but apparently the internet connection is not strong enough. We're not able to hear you. We do have your written testimony, and I have circulated it to all members so that your input is important to us, and we have gotten it. So mahalo for trying to connect, but we're going to proceed to the next measure, and I just want to say thank you for trying. Okay. Members, we're going to move back to where we were in the next measure, which is Senate Bill 130, relating to the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction and Enforcement Act. And first up, testimony in opposition from Elizabeth Kent with the Commission to Promote Uniform Laws. Please proceed, Ms. Kent.
Aloha, I'm one of Hawaii's uniform law commissioners, and the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction and Enforcement Act, UCCJEA, is one of the most successful uniform laws in the family law realm. So that's why I'm here testifying today. Although I totally support the intent of the bill, the amendment is not consistent with the purposes of the UCCJEA, and thus the opposition. By mandating respect for foreign decrees, the UCCJEA encourages reciprocal respect by foreign nations. Section 105C contains an important exception which permits a state to refuse enforcement when the custody law of the foreign nation violates fundamental principles of human rights. The drafters of the UCCJEA believed the human rights language provided a necessary and sufficient exception for addressing potential human rights violations in another nation's child custody law. And to add more specific examples of human rights violations could be interpreted as targeting particular foreign nations, and that could lead to a backlash by other nations which might refuse to enforce our custody decrees. And so that's really the concern that I have. So great idea, but just not for placement in the UCC JEA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service on the commission to promote uniform laws.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice of you. Thanks.
I've learned a lot about it. I was reading your testimony and I looked into it, and what a great service you and the other four commissioners provide to us. So I just wanted to say mahalo.
Thank you. I will share that with them.
Yes, thank you. Please do. Next, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii State Council on Mental Health. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify on Senate Bill 130? If not, question, Vice Chair? Nope. Nope. Thanks very much. We'll move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 869 relating to the Youth Commission. This measure clarifies that a majority of the members appointed to the Youth Commission shall constitute a quorum to do business. First up, we have testimony in support from the Department of Human Services, State of Hawaii, Kathy Betts, Director. In writing, we have testimony in support from the Office of Youth Services. And we have testimony in support from the Hawaii State Youth Commission, Jun Shin. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jun Shin. I am one of the commission members of the Hawaii State Youth Commission, as well as the legislative lead for the commission this session. And you got our written testimony, so I'll just be really quick. The commission is in strong support of Senate Bill 869, Senate Draft 2, changing the quorum from 8 to a majority of the members. We would like this quorum change to have more flexibility in fulfilling our mission and tasks, especially because we do have some upcoming vacancies coming up. And we only have, like, as of right now, 11 members, and so we won't be able to meet the quorum in the upcoming months. And so, yeah, we just would like some flexibility kind of moving forward to be able to, take care of business and take care of what we need to do. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Shin. I appreciate your service on the Hawaii State Youth Commission. Next, we have testimony in support from the Hawaii Youth Services Network, testimony in support from Zoe Dwan and from Eric G. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify on Senate Bill 869? If not, questions, Vice Chair? Seeing no questions, we'll move on. Thanks to all the testifiers. We'll move on to Senate Bill 313 relating to the State Rehabilitation Council. This measure reduces the number of members on the State Rehabilitation Council from 21 to 15, and it authorizes the State Rehabilitation Council to establish a quorum and conduct business without regard to vacancies. First up, we have testimony in support from the Department of Human Services, testimony in support from the Behavioral Health Administration, testimony in support from the Disability and Communication Access Board, and testimony in support from Hawaii Disability Rights Center. Lulu Erdicek. That's all the testifiers that have signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure here or on Zoom? If not, we don't really have anyone to ask questions of, so we'll move on. Senate Bill 591 relating to gambling. This measure establishes the operation of an illegal gambling business as a Class C felony. On this measure, we have testimony with comments from the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here, and I appreciate your testimony, even though it was late. Very helpful. Please proceed, Ms. Nakamatsu.
And thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu, appearing on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Department. And we do apologize for submitting late, but we just wanted to express some concerns about the current language of the bill. Although we appreciate the intent, wanting to get enforced against illegal gambling establishments, we definitely share the sentiment, we share the concern. We hear from the community regularly about this ongoing problem. We don't think that this is the right approach. We do want to remind the committee and others that Act 111 was just passed last year, which strengthened our existing statutes called promoting gambling in the first and second degree. And what Act 111 did was it lowered the state of mind necessary to prove both of these offenses. First degree is now reckless instead of knowing, and second degree is negligent instead of knowing. So it lowered the state of mind for both of these, but at the same time, it also increased the severity. So now these are a Class B and C felony, respectively. So having, particularly promoting gambling in the second degree as a felony is very helpful, and we are in the process of using that, working with HPD on various operations. We confer with them on cases. So if you could potentially strengthen or bring back some of the bill that we had wanted to see last year from HB 2197, 2022, we would appreciate it. But if not, we totally understand, and we will proceed with what we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being here. If you could stick around for questions, I think we might have, at least I have one.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Thanks so much, I appreciate that. Next, we have testimony and support from the Animal Welfare Institute and testimony in opposition from Gerard Silva. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify on Senate Bill 591? If not, questions, Vice Chair? If I could ask a question, Deputy Prosecutor Nakamatsu. Act 111, which you had referred to, came out of this legislature just last session, is that correct?
Yes.
And so you've only just begun to use it. This committee is eager to learn from you over the next many months before next session how that has gone. And it would be really useful for us before next session to understand what has been the things that have worked well, and and things that you've learned, lessons learned, perhaps things that if you feel like you need to have changes. But we'd like to get some data and just to learn what's has been your experience with Act 111, because it was a big. We hope it's a useful measure that will assist you in your enforcement actions. Have you been able to use it to date that you can share with us?
I did do a quick search of our system, and to date, I think we only have one. Oh, I didn't check first degree, but I would imagine there's not too many of those. The second degree, we only have one pending case. And part of that is probably due to the amount of workup that's needed for these operations for HPD. And of course, it would only count from the date that the law was effective, so about 7 months ago.
So it's only 7 months ago, so it's just beginning. So I understand that there may be some additional cases that will occur between now and next session, and I would just request kindly of you that it would be very helpful for us to learn from your experience so that we can see whether or not it was helpful and any lessons learned.
Absolutely.
So
We're
if you could share that with us.
Always happy to meet with the committee
Great.
and the legislators.
Great, thanks very much, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. We'll move on to the next measure, Senate Bill 1505, relating to transportation. This measure authorizes the Department of Transportation to delay or deny approval for port entry or departure in instances where the department has received notice from a federal agency or other agency that a vessel or its crew has engaged in activity that has violated any federal, state, or county law or rule pertaining to environmental protection or maritime transportation. First up, we have testimony in support from the Department of Transportation. Oh, please come on up to the podium so everyone that's watching you on TV can hear you. And if you could just briefly describe your testimony, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Chair and Vice Chair. I'm Dre Khalili, the Deputy Director of Transportation for Harbors, and we stand in support of the measure, and that's our testimony.
Yeah, it was very brief. Anyway, thank you. Appreciate that. Next, we have testimony support from Ted Boland, Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are in person.
Live.
From Honolulu. Ted Boland. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnitz, Vice Chair Takayama, Ted Boland on behalf of the Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition. I think it's appropriate that our ports not be used by people who have been found, by vessels or crews that have been found to have violated environmental protection or maritime transportation rules. on the federal, state, or county law level. In particular, if we have laws prohibiting seabed mining, I think Hawaii would be a natural place for people to dock because there isn't any place close by. So as part of the prohibition of seabed mining, I would like to see this bill passed as well to make it clear that people cannot come into our ports if they are illegally doing that kind of work. So we support this bill strongly and urge you to pass. Available for questions if you have any. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. Next, we have testimony and support from Douglas McCauley with the Benioff Ocean Science Laboratory and testimony and support from Bobby Dobush of the Ocean Foundation. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify in Senate Bill 1505? If not, question, Vice Chair? Yes, Vice Chair Takayama, please.
If I may, Hawaii Reef Ocean Coalition. I just have a question about, in reference to your testimony on deep seabed mining. Is this something that is existing in theory, or is it something that is actually happening or soon to be happening anywhere?
My understanding is it is soon to be happening. There has been a UN commission, I understand, that has had some kind of, I don't know if it's a prohibition is too strong a word, but they've had some kind of limitation on it, and it's going out of, the limitation is ending. There's a strong desire for seabed mining because of the minerals that are used for, especially for renewable energy things, lithium and cobalt and other minerals down there. So there will be a lot of pressure for this. Some of this activity will be legal, some of it illegal, and yes, it is definitely a threat to our ocean floor. And it's not unlike strip mining, as I say in my testimony, I think, where they scrape the bottom. It releases a plume, it releases a lot of carbon, and then there's a plume that comes up to the surface, that's pumped up to the surface, and then there's a plume that goes down. So there's a lot of environmental harm in seabed mining.
I'm just curious to know whether it's actually going to be happening imminently or
I believe it is.
maybe. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question for Department of Transportation. Thank you so much for being here. And my question will have a little explanation first so that people will understand. There is an international conference called the United Nations Conference on the Law of the Sea, to which the United States is not a signatory. That UN Conference on the Law of the Sea established something called the International Seabed Authority, which has jurisdiction over seabed mining. And the agreement is that they will set up a regulatory system for this. And there are some countries, Papua New Guinea and Nauru, that are very interested in pursuing this. So they've initiated this process, which has a time frame to it, to develop this regulatory framework and permitting system, which would require environmental impact analysis and such. The closest area to Hawaii where there have been identified resources on the seabed is a place called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, which is located east of us and slightly south, well, east of us, basically. So we might be the closest port. If the International Seabed Authority did approve of someone, of a nation and a company related to that nation to mine in this area, so they had proper permits and everything under the International Seabed Authority, this measure, and that a ship that is used in that operation wanted to make a port call here. My understanding and reading of this measure is that if they were done properly, legally, that they would be able to come into our port. Is that your reading of this?
That's our understanding. The original version of the measure as introduced basically said harbors don't let anyone berth or use your facility if they've done illegal stuff. And our response was, we want to be part of a solution, but someone's got to tell us this is not, this ship has crew or has been involved itself in some illegal activity. And so all we're looking for in the measure, and again, we want to be part of the solution, is notification that this ship has been involved in something untoward. Even if it's not illegal in our jurisdiction, if we want to be part of I'll just say law enforcement for lack of a better term, we're happy to do that. We just need notice. So provided that we don't have notice that says something, illegal occurred either with crew or the vessel, it would be fine.
Okay. And then my next question, last question is, if there was a ship that was engaged in illegal fishing activity and you were notified it, this measure would also apply?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? If not, we'll move on. Thanks very much to our testifiers. Next, we have Senate Bill 346 relating to emergency vehicles. This measure makes it discretionary for authorized emergency vehicles to use sirens when responding to an emergency or in other specified situations if the siren is not reasonably necessary under the circumstances. On this measure, we have testimony support from the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, and we have testimony support from Curtis Miller. Come on up, please, to the podium. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. I'm Curtis Miller. I'm with the AOAO of Liliuokalani Gardens. It's a
If you could explain what AOAO is.
Association of Apartment Owners
Okay.
at Liliuokalani Gardens in Waikiki. Just about 400 homeowners. I'm Vice President of the board there. My written testimony was originally written, drafted for the Neighborhood Council to adopt, and they would have voted on it this past meeting. However, they didn't have quorum, but it still stands as an agenda item. My written testimony, that resolution, I stand behind in strong support of this bill 346, and I'll just kind of highlight very quickly that in researching this, I found that there's very little improved patient outcome from using sirens and lights to transport patients to the hospital, and probably the increase in time, or the decrease in time, amounts to under a minute on average when sirens are used. So then also there's more traffic accidents when sirens are deployed than when they're not. So there are a lot of reasons, and I stand behind the written testimony in full support, and I appreciate your passage of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And we received testimony and support from Natalie Iwasa. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify on Senate Bill 346? Mr. Boland, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Ted Boland, speaking as an individual. I live in Manoa Valley, and I have had the experience of being awakened many times at about 4 a.m. when somebody has called an ambulance and it goes into the valley, and then about 10 minutes later it comes back out of the valley, and they've got their siren on the whole time. I would like the authorities to have the discretion, especially at night when they can see what's coming, to decide when to use their siren and when not. And so I would urge support for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify in this measure? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you to the testifiers. Next, we have Senate Bill 497 relating to commercial vehicles. This measure prohibits commercial vehicles weighing 10,000 pounds or more from driving in the left lane on all roadways with 2 lanes unless the commercial vehicle is able to maintain speed with existing traffic flow and is in the process of passing another vehicle, and it provides some exceptions. On this measure, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Transportation. Welcome, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair. Drake Halili, Deputy Director of Transportation for Harbors. We did submit written testimony in support. We stand on that testimony. We do outline some concerns, one of which is that we already have authority to regulate lane use through signing. And the second concern has to do with potential conflicts created by this law with complete streets features. And we do have staff online who can answer any questions in greater detail.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the City and County of Honolulu Department of Transportation Services. Testimony and support from Hydroponics Alternatives, Nancy Jones. Testimony in opposition from Natalie Iwasa. Testimony and support from Stephanie Sakamoto. And testimony and support from Zeb Jones. Is there anyone else here or online wishing to testify on Senate Bill 497? If not, questions, members? I have a question for the Department of Transportation. My reading of your testimony is that your second point, that this measure potentially would decrease the safety of those roadway users such as pedestrians or cyclists that are using the right lane, but if that lane is very narrow, then it could potentially put more vehicles next to those bicycles or pedestrians. Is that accurate? Am I reading it right?
I am going to ask if our staff online, Brian Kimura, who's the head of our
Oh,
traffic
Mr.
section.
Kimura, could you respond to that? Am I reading your testimony right? Mr. Kimura?
Correct. In those situations, we're looking at when it's a two-lane roadway. So at that point, everybody would have to be in the right lane, right? The commercial vehicles. So one of the solutions for that would be if it's only restricted to three-lane roadways, then you would not necessarily have that same situation.
Okay, so if it's two lanes going in the same direction, all the trucks would be on the left lane, but more vehicles would be on the right lane, so you'd be pushing up against cyclists and pedestrians. But if it were a three-lane roadway, all moving the same direction, then that wouldn't be a problem. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Great. Thank you very much for that explanation. Appreciate it. Any other questions, members? Representative Ganadin, please proceed.
To the Department of Transportation. In reading this, of course it applies to motorcycles. My friends who are into motorcycles, they say loud pipes save lives. Is there any validity to that old adage? Like that, if you can hear a motorcyclist coming,
This is not that bill, is it?
I'm on the wrong bill?
Yeah, this is restricting large trucks.
Man, that's Friday. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I got really nervous because I didn't know.
Yeah, I was like, I'm about to talk about the motorcycle muffler bill. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Really
That's what I get for jumping in. Sorry, everybody.
Okay. No worries. Thank you, Representative Ganadin. Any other questions on Senate Bill 497? If not, we'll move on to the next measure, Senate Bill 587. Now this one relates to transportation, and this increases the minimum and maximum fines for violating provisions relating to the installation of noisy mufflers. It authorizes police officers with probable cause to stop vehicles with noisy mufflers to inspect their mufflers. On this measure, we have testimony in support from Don Balurin, testimony in opposition from Ryan Willis and Kanoe Willis, testimony in support from numerous individuals, including B.A. McClintock, Denise Boisvert, Kim Jorgensen, Margaret Murchie, John Bickle, William Owens, Michael Mischer, Roland Nips, and Salvatore Anello. That's all the testimony we've received. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify on this measure? Mr. Boland, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members. Ted Boland, testifying as an individual in strong support of this legislation. Noise pollution adversely affects the lives of millions of people. Studies have shown that there are direct links between noise and health. Problems related to noise include stress-related illnesses, high blood pressure, speech interference, hearing loss, sleep disruption, and lost productivity. There was testimony that it's some kind of First Amendment right to have a noisy muffler and to alter your vehicle as you wish. As a former Deputy Attorney General, I have to take some issue with that. There is the First Amendment right, but it is limited by reasonable regulation for time, place, and manner. And it seems to me that limiting the noise that your muffler makes is a reasonable restriction on the use of the vehicle, especially if it's altered in order to, in a way that makes more noise and doesn't come that way. So I'm in strong support of this, and I urge you to pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 587? If not, questions, members? You don't really have anyone to ask a question of?
Nope. The Department of Transportation?
No. Okay, no questions. We'll move on. Thank you very much to the people who sent in testimony and Mr. Boland who was here. We will move on to the next measure, Senate Bill 1086, relating to transportation. This measure amends the composition and duties of the State Highway Safety Council. First up, we have testimony and support from the Department of Transportation.
Dre Khalili again, Deputy Director for Harbors. We've submitted testimony in support, and we also have other staff online who can answer questions in detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. Please, before you start talking, come on up to the podium so that everyone on TV can see you and hear you, and introduce yourself, and please proceed.
Tiffany Yajima on behalf of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. We stand in our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Could you briefly summarize why you think this is a good idea?
Sure, we support the HD1, which includes a member of the automotive manufacturing industry as a member of the council.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from Auto Innovators.
Same.
She said, same.
I think the testimony
Yeah, no one can hear you if you're talking from there and they can't see you.
Twice. I'm sorry. I apologize. I believe testimony may have been submitted twice.
Oh, so it's
The same entity.
Same entity?
Yes.
Okay, so
Thank
we get
you.
to see you twice.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
I apologize.
No problem. And then finally, testimony and support from the Ulupono Initiative. Is there anyone else here or online wishing to testify in this measure? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, the next measure is Senate Bill 1173 relating to vehicles. This measure prohibits a person from causing a diesel or gas-powered vehicle to discharge clearly visible smoke, soot, or other exhaust emissions onto another person or motor vehicle. Establishes a $500 fine. First up, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii Transportation Association.
Mahalo, Chair Tarnas and the committee members. We do support the bill as written. The rest of my testimony goes on to sort of explain why we support it, but suffice it to say, we do support as written. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from the Hawaii Bicycling League, from Nancy Jones, from Bob Bengston, and testimony in opposition from Ryan Willis, testimony in opposition from Kanoe Willis, testimony in support from Zeb Jones, and in support from Christopher Tipton. Is there anyone else here or online wishing to testify in Senate Bill 1173? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on to our last measure, Senate Bill 989 relating to unmanned aircraft systems. This measure establishes the offense of trespass with an unmanned aircraft system as a misdemeanor. First up, we have testimony and support from Idor Harris, Honolulu Tower Apartment Owners Association, testimony and support from Lynn Matasau, and testimony and support from Cullen Chong. Is there anyone else here or online wishing to testify on Senate Bill 989? If not, questions, members? Of no one in particular? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to decision-making. Thank you.
Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thank you to members for being here. And again, thank you to all the testifiers for being here. You really do help us improve our legislation by testifying, and it really does make a difference. So I want to say thank you to people who are here and online. So let's go to the top of the agenda. First, on Senate Bill 67. On this measure, I would like to recommend passing out an amended bill, so it'd be a House Draft 2. I would like to add the language, hold on. I would like to add the language, oh, here it is. On page 2, I would say that this section shall apply to beaches under the jurisdiction of the department, including private beaches in which the state has an easement or other property interest, but not private beaches in which the state has no property interest, and which are located in a county, as it says in here. This is incorporating one of the recommended amendments from Mr. Meller. With that, I would like to keep the defective date of June 30th, 3000 and move it on to conference. That's my recommendation. Any questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 67 SD1 HD1 with further amendments, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Holt.
Aye.
Representative Hashimoto.
Aye.
Representative Ichiyama.
Aye.
Representative Ilagan, excused. Representative Kong, excused. Representative Mizuno.
Aye.
Representative Souza, excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Senate Bill 129. On this measure, I would like to recommend moving out an amended bill, House Draft 2, with technical amendments, change the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and add some amendments here so that it'd be in line with a similar bill that we passed out of this committee some time ago, House Bill 470. On line 4, before the word emergency shelter, add the word no cost. On line 10, same thing, no cost emergency shelter. And on line 14, we would add the words a provider who renders no cost emergency shelter and related services to a minor shall, 1, document in writing the efforts made to contact the minor's parent, legal guardian, or legal custodian, and 2, take steps to ensure that youth who are or should be under the legal jurisdiction of the juvenile justice or child welfare systems obtain and receive services from those systems until a time as the youth are released from the jurisdiction of juvenile justice or child welfare systems as required by the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, Title 42, United States Code, Sections 5701 through 5752, as amended. And then I would keep the rest of the bill as is, and I want to keep the, I want to change the defective date to 6/30/3000. That's my recommendation. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 129 SD1 HD1 with further amendments, noting the excused absence of Representatives Ilagan, Kong, and Souza for the remainder of the agenda. Any reservations or noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, moving on to Senate Bill 45. My recommendation is to pass out a House Draft 2 with technical amendments and make this effective upon approval. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 45 SD1 HD1 with further amendments, noting the excused absence of Representatives Ilagan and Kong. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, moving on to, did you want to notice that Rep. Souza?
And I know presence of Rep. Souza.
Yeah, we
Thank
recognize
you.
the
Right.
presence of Rep.
Yes.
Souza. Thank you. Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 406 relating to child visitation. My recommendation is to pass out House Draft 2 with the amendment only being to make this effective upon approval. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 406 SD1 HD1 with further amendments, noting the excused absences of Representative Ilagan and Kong. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. On the next bill, Senate Bill 130, based on the testimony from Elizabeth Kent, who is one of the commissioners on the Commission to Promote Uniform Laws, this measure is not necessary. We already have a law in the books. That's HRS Hawaii Revised Statutes 583A-101 and following. It is the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction and Enforcement Act, and that's one of the uniform acts drafted by the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws. It specifies which court should decide a custody case, not how the court should decide, but it has a provision in it that permits a state to refuse to enforce a foreign custody decree if the child custody law of the foreign nation violates human rights. And that exception under Section 583A-105C covers the concerns raised in the proposed amendment by this bill. I informed the senator who introduced this bill. He says, oh, I didn't know that. I understand why you're deferring it. So that's my recommendation. We're going to defer Senate Bill 130. Next, moving on. Senate Bill 869. I think everybody is happy with this measure as written. My recommendation is to change the effective date to be upon approval and move it out as a House Draft 1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 869 SD2 with further amendments, any reservations or noes, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next bill, Senate Bill 313. Everyone seems very comfortable with the language in this measure. I would like to move this out as is. Senate Bill 313 as is.
Voting on Senate Bill 313 as is, any reservations or noes, seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 591 relating to gambling. Very helpful testimony from the prosecuting attorneys of the City and County of Honolulu. Members, you'll remember perhaps last year we passed out a bill that became Act 111 that increased the penalties for promoting gambling in the first and second degree and lowered the state of mind for both of these offenses from knowingly to recklessly and negligently, respectively. That measure actually is better than the measure that we have before us. The measure before us actually would make it more difficult for the prosecutors to charge, and so they probably would never use it. So my recommendation is to defer this measure. I do acknowledge that there is interest by advocates to try to use this measure to address the challenge that prosecutors have and police have in dealing with chicken fights, often called cockfighting, and dog fights. I'm not going to try to do that on this measure. I would encourage advocates to work on this for next session. And in fact, by learning about it, it doesn't seem like it would be most effective to do it in this section of the statutes anyway, under gambling. We should probably look at under section 711, 1109, .3 and .35 that relates to cruelty to animals. So I want to acknowledge that I sympathize with your interest in doing something about cockfighting and dogfighting, but it won't be in this bill. We'll have to do it next session, and so I would urge the Animal Welfare Institute, who submitted testimony in this regard, to work on that with legislators for next session. So we're going to defer Senate Bill 591. Okay, let's move on to Senate Bill 1505. This measure, I think we've learned a lot about some things that we haven't talked much about. Seabed mining and where that is right now in process on international law. I think this measure could also apply to other illegal activities such as illegal fishing. Then this would provide a means for the Department of Transportation to delay or deny approval for port entry or departure where they have been informed that a vessel or its crew has engaged in illegal activity. So I would like to change the effective date to upon approval and move out this bill as a House Draft 2. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1505 SD2 HD1 with further amendments, any reservations or noes, seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 346 relating to emergency vehicles. Everyone seems comfortable with this language, and so I'd like to move this out as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 346 SD1 passing as is. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On Senate Bill 497, I would like to recommend we move out an amended version, so this would be a House Draft 1. Page 1, line 6 and line 14 of the bill, I would like to add some language so it says the lanes are, quote, for traffic moving in the same direction. Page 1, line 15, add the word, add an additional word so that it would be far left when they're referring to the lane. And then I would like to take the recommendation that we heard from the Department of Transportation Highways expert that this would only apply to roads with 3 lanes or more moving in one direction. And I think that would address their concerns. I would like to change the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and move this to conference. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 497 SD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On this measure, Senate Bill 587, this is one of many measures that are trying to address noisy vehicles. I'm learning a lot about our noise laws, and there may actually be some problems with the fundamental noise laws that are difficult to enforce. I'd like to move this forward for discussion. I want to keep change the effective date to June 30th, 3000, so we can take it to conference. I'm not convinced that this is the best way to do it, but I would like to change on page 3, line 4 and line 8, change enforcement officer to police officer as it's on page 2, line 20. I want to acknowledge the testifiers who have been testifying in opposition to this, who said it would be much better if we just set a decibel level and go off of that. I recognize that there are people that think that loud vehicles are self-expression and that it may in fact make them safer. I think we're going to need to deal with this. This probably is not the best way to do it, but I'd like to move it forward for discussion. I appreciate that not everyone would agree with me, but so an HD1, change the effective date to 6/30/3000, make that one change of enforcement officer to police officer, and move it forward. Questions or concerns, members? Yes, Representative Ganadin.
With respect, Chair, I'm going to be voting no. There was no testimony by anybody from the government, from either state or county, no Department of Transportation, no Honolulu Police Department, no Office of the Attorney General. I'm also uncomfortable with giving field officers the discretion to just find probable cause for a vehicle that they just think is noisy. For that reason, I'll be voting no. I think if we want to address noise, we're going to have to deal with a better bill.
Yeah, understood. And I think you're right, and I would invite your participation using your keen legal mind to help us figure out how to do it. Any other questions or concerns? Yes, Representative Holt.
Same request.
You just tell me what you're doing. You don't have to request anything.
I mean, yeah, well, same.
You're just going to vote no?
Yeah.
Okay, I totally get it. I get it. Any other questions or concerns, members?
No vote, please.
Okay, all right, understood. Any other, don't request anything, just tell me. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, speak up. Don't have any mufflers on, speak up. Okay, if no other comments or smarmy remarks, yes, let's go ahead and take a vote on this. Vice Chair, please.
Voting on Senate Bill 587 SD2 with amendments and noting the no votes of Representatives Ganadin, Holt, and Souza. Any other noes or reservations? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Just barely. That's very indicative. Thank you.
Whoa.
No, that's good. I mean, that's very important.
Spirited conversation.
That's good. I mean, we need to hear this. This is what democracy is all about. So go for it. We've got to deal with these things, and they're not always clean. So, okay, let's move on. Senate Bill 1086 relating to transportation. This regards the State Highway Safety Council. On this measure, we found that this is actually has constitutional problems. And believe me, I ask attorneys about this. I don't just make it up, contrary to what some newspapers might say. That there is a constitutional problem here because we're not able to name a legislator as a member of a permanent agency that actually has more than just advisory power. And that would violate Article 3, Section 8 of the Hawaii State Constitution. So, I'm going to recommend that on page 2, where it says that the council shall be chaired on an annually rotating basis, basis between the chairpersons of the respective committees of the House of Representatives and the Senate having jurisdiction over transportation. We're going to change that to be that the council shall be chaired on an annually rotating basis by a member appointed by the Senate President and a member appointed by the House Speaker. In addition to these two appointees, the following or their designated representatives shall be members of the council, and then we continue with the language that's in the bill. That should cure the flaw, the constitutional flaw of this bill, because the rest of the bill is good, and the Department of Transportation really would like it to move forward. So that's my recommendation, to move it out. I would like to keep the defective date so that I can take it to conference. We can take it to conference if it moves out of the House, and then I can explain why I did it and make sure I have my attorneys there to back me up. So that's my recommendation, HD2 with those changes. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1086, SD2, HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, moving on to Senate Bill 1173. I never knew this happened, where there's actually vehicles with modifications that if you do something, the driver does something, it belches out this smoke that it will come behind the vehicle and, you know, cover whoever is following you. There's a name for it. What's it called?
Coal rolling.
Coal rolling. Huh, I never knew these things. Coal rolling. Well, that's not a nice thing to do. So let's move this bill out. As a House Draft 2, make technical amendments and make it effective upon approval. I do have the approval of prior concurrence of the Transportation Chair to do this. So Senate Bill 1173 with the technical amendments and changing the effective date to effective upon approval. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1173, SD1, HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Final bill on this agenda, Senate Bill 989, relating to unmanned aircraft systems. I checked, and we do have the authority to regulate drones regarding trespass and privacy. I know we talked before that FAA controls aircraft as they go, but we actually do have police powers regarding trespass and privacy as it relates to drones. So this bill exercises that authority, and I think it's a good bill. So I would like to propose that we move it out with the House Draft 2 with technical amendments and make it effective upon approval. And I do have the prior concurrence of the Transportation Chair. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 989, HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone being here. There being no further business before this committee, we are adjourned.